Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Harambe. He's colorful, blatantly opinionated, and most certainly controversial. He's Pluria Marshall, Executive Director of the National Black Media Coalition.
The National Black Media Coalition, simply put, is civil rights in the media. And I get so tired of hearing people talking about civil rights is dead. Civil rights is as alive as the people who believe in it are willing to work. And what we do is we interact with radio, television, cable television, and some of the newer technology that's coming online to make sure that black folks can own it, that they can work in it, and that the community has access to it. That's the mission of the National Black Media Coalition. We're private, non-profit, tax exempt. We are 21 years old, and we serve a lot of people. We've helped a lot of owners. We've helped a lot of reporters and anchors and general managers. I mean, we worked across the board, and we've delivered access to a lot of communities in terms of people being able to see something different rather than just crime. And we feel that our work has been important, but we feel that we've only scratched the surface. So, you know, we do what we do. We've had a lot of affiliates in the past, but after 21 years, a lot of that stuff dries up. So we're moving to a membership base where we're up to about 5,000 members now.
Pluria, what progress is currently being made in the area in terms of African Americans in the electronic media, or is there any progress being made?
Well, I think that we have probably come to a standstill. I mean, we ain't losing ground particularly, except with black men. I think that number is shrinking. Black women might be advancing, say, 1%. White women are advancing 18%. You know, so when they start talking about women liberation, they're talking about white women. Okay. Ownership, we've slipped from 240 to 185 of mainly radio stations. So we really got to be careful about that because, you know, the bigger companies can own more nationally and in each individual market. So they better watch the concentration, or you'll have 5 or 6 companies in each market owning 4 stations outright and having a local management agreement to run 1 or 2 others. So you might have 4 or 5 companies controlling 6 stations each. So everybody else is history in that market. So that's where the relaxation of the duopoly rules seem to be headed. But the FCC has sort of refused to really do the research so they can tell its public and its regulatees what's really happening. Right now, I don't think they really know. They're just kind of operating on just sheer momentum. You know, everything's going, and somebody say, well, now we need to raise it up to 20. But they haven't checked to see what's happening at 18. So part of what we did today when they had 3 of the FCC commissioners there is raise it in no uncertain terms that they really needed to do the research and see what's happening with minority ownership.
Okay, now several years ago when I talked to you, you mentioned that there were a number of provisions that were in place that were having at least a minimal impact.
No, it had a dramatic impact, not minimal.
Okay.
Because we went from 40 stations to 240 stations.
Now, are we talking radio stations or TV stations?
Mainly radio stations, but TV too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think now we're up to about 20 stations, 20 black-owned television stations. But most of them are small market, medium market, and home shopping network stations.
Mm-hmm. Now, the provisions that you had mentioned then, one was a tax certificate, I believe. Another one was a minority preference provision or something like that. You want to
stress sale policy. Those are still in place. The preference policy for women was slapped down, but preference policy for minorities is only applicable during comparative hearing where you're competing for a license. So it isn't really used that much, but the tax certificate has been the most prolific in producing minority ownership. Okay, and those tools are still in place. Mark Fowler tried to get rid of them, and the Senate overrode him. And they told him that these rules were on the book and it was his job to enforce them, and he better not use no government money to take them apart.
Now, when you say Mark Fowler, you're talking about Mark Fowler of the Federal Communications
Commission. Yeah, the former chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, a significantly redneck chairman who really detested any special provisions for minorities, no matter how many years of segregation and slavery we've had to endure.
Pluria, what is your read on the current makeup of the FCC?
Well, I feel pretty good about the two new commissioners. The black commissioner is someone that I've always been able to work well with. And the chairman seems to be cut from the right block of the wood, okay? But I'm not sure. You know, I sometimes have problems with liberals because they tell you what they want you to hear, but they don't do what needs to be done. So I'm just waiting to see if he's going to do what needs to be done, because so far he hasn't arrested any actions that were detrimental to the minority ownership situation. Like today, the limit was supposed to go from 18 to 20 on the number of radio stations you could own. Well, that thing should have been stayed. You know, they should have stopped it at 18 and study it to see I mean, we done lost 60 stations. You know, so what's happening? In ownership, yeah. So,
why have we lost 60 stations?
Yeah, but the FCC is a damn regulator. Let them tell us why. Okay. Because they should be researching it.
Okay.
And that's what we told them people today. You know, don't tell us that today, you know, the limit is raised to 20 and that's what it is. Well, hell, that ain't what it is. You know, if it ain't good policy, then stop it, study it, and change it. You know, instead of 18, it might need to be 16. And plus, there are almost no companies up to the limit, so why are you raising it?
Now, has your organization done any tracking insofar as the makeup, the ethnic makeup of various news departments in media outlets throughout the country, particularly decision-making positions?
Well, see, that's a report that's presented to the FCC every year. Every station has to fill out a Form 395 that lists by race and sex all of their employees. And they have 4 categories, major categories that they list them in. Now, the classification sometimes a little off, so you can have the top 4 categories covers about 85% of the jobs. So for somebody to say they're doing well in the top 4 categories don't necessarily mean anything. But, you know, I can tell you that in general managers, general sales managers, and news directors in television, we're damn near non-existent. And I think those are the areas that the radio and television companies need to improve in. There are very few cable system managers or marketing managers. I mean, the top 3 to 4 people who run those operations are generally white men. That hadn't changed that much. So we feel that, you know, we have to continue to push them. We sue them. We work with them, you know, which is something that we're working on now to come up with a program where they can instantly identify where black folks are anywhere in the country.
I know when I spoke to you several years ago, when I interviewed you, you indicated that the National Black Media Coalition was challenging in the neighborhood of 40 to 50 broadcast licenses per year. At what rate?
We've almost stopped challenging licenses for the sake of license challenges. See, what we're doing now is we're working with broadcasters to help them find black folks. Now, if we run across a broadcaster who is just a dog, I ain't got no black folks, I don't want no black folks, he in trouble. We're going to deal with him. So where we find a clear-cut case of violation of the FCC EEO rules, we're going to deal with them.
Okay.
But to go over all the stats and say, well, here's 5 stations that don't meet the criteria, file on them, we have discontinued that in favor of a program to work with the broadcasters so they can find them, rather than wait until they don't find them and then zap them.
Now, Pluria, you were a part of a landmark decision that took place right here in Washington, D.C. Years ago, which kind of set the pace in the future I believe that you lost that particular case technically, so to speak, and I think it was directly related, if I'm not mistaken, to a zone of reasonableness or something like that as it relates to the percentage of ethnic minorities within the organization. Expound on that, will you,
Well,
please?
the zone of reasonableness is simply the FCC's apartheid rule, which says that if you have 20% minority people in the workforce in your market, if you hire 10%, then you're doing okay with us. Well, hell, when we came out of slavery, we was considered 3/5 of a person. But here we are in 1994, and we got a federal agency saying 50% is okay. I mean, it's racist. There ain't no other way to describe it. The rule, the zone of reasonableness rule need to be thrown out. It don't need to be 50%. It needs to be 100%. And they need to quit lying about why it's there. You know, it's there to protect a certain number of redneck managers and owners in this business. And they need to have the covers pulled off of them and let everybody start from the same spot. And if you don't finish the race, you get your butt kicked. You get fined, you get a short-term renewal, or whatever goes with you being unable to operate under the laws of the country.
Now, what effect has deregulation of the industry had on gains that African Americans and ethnic minorities were making?
Well, deregulation was something that ended up telling broadcasters that they didn't have to serve the community anymore. They got something on the books that says if you address 10 issues of community importance per year, then you've met our community service mandate. Well, you can do that in a day or two, and then you're through. So basically, the radio and television stations and the cable systems in America serve only as it relates to their ability to make money. You know, if they can make money on news and they can do it a certain way, then they go after it. But generally, they put a lot of sensational stuff on that discredits a lot of us, and we don't like it. But a general manager said, well, we were dealing with crime, we was dealing with housing, we was dealing with education. But they do it from the news perspective. So public affairs programming have just about disappeared from television.
Now, you hear a lot of talk about the new 500 channel cable systems on the horizon, and of course, with 500 channels...
Ain't gonna be no 500 channels.
Okay, why not?
They can't program 60 channels.
Okay.
All right, and who gonna have time to be sitting around? It's gonna take you 4 hours to get through the damn guide to see what you want to see. You know?
So you don't see that happening?
Oh man, hey, look here. You know, they'll be lucky if they can program 200 channels. 500 channels? Forget it. A lot of cable systems have problems programming 60, 72, 48. You know, I mean, they have problems programming what they have right
So
now.
in other words, you don't see any way in which the increased programming opportunities are going to create any opportunities for African Americans?
Now, see, America is woefully lacking in its nerve to address programming for us. I mean, look at something like Black Entertainment Television.
Okay.
I mean, Bob Johnson ought to have his butt kicked for offering all them damn music videos and very little programming of substance 24 hours every day. I mean, we talking about 500 channels. Here we got one programming channel that's damn near a wash. You know, I mean, we got all these needs. Let's stay in entertainment. Look at all of the stuff that needs to be done in entertainment. You know, but if you can't see it on BET, when the black shows come on, they're on CBS, NBC, Fox, not BET. So I'm saying that we have an opportunity over there at BET, and I would like to see some quality programming come out of there. You know, I mean, it's an insult to our intelligence that if he want to put that crap on for the kids, you know, give them 6 hours. but realize that there are adults with good jobs who would like to see something that we can feel good about. You know, so, you know, I just don't see the opportunity being taken advantage of. When you look at a BET, and here's a brother that owns this company that's in charge of it. I don't care what nobody say about, well, he got to do what the white folks tell him. He doesn't. Time Warner and TCI rather, got their own agendas, and they don't care nothing about that little company over there that they own 45% of it collectively, I think. But Bob's in charge. So here's a brother who ought to be tried for treason, for refusing to be one of the leaders in programming for the African American community. When his name come up, people start laughing. Or they look at you like, are you serious? And say, let's move, let's talk about something else.
Well, let's talk about something else.
All right.
Let's talk about World African Network. Are you familiar with them?
Yeah.
What is your assessment of them at this point?
Well, it's a new service. They got a lot of talent involved in it. I'm familiar with Gene Jackson and Phyllis, his wife. Both of them very talented people, good, solid programming minds, good promotional minds. And it's just too soon. I mean, they're not going to make the same mistake Bob Johnson's made, because Gene has a global view. I mean, he's going to do stuff in Africa, and he's going to do stuff in the Caribbean, and his wife is a good programming person. Used to head up children's programming for NBC, you know, in the country. So, you know, I look for great things from that programming service, and it's just brand new, so it's not a whole lot to evaluate them on because it's just starting.
Now, I know that your organization, the National Black Media Coalition, also helps African Americans find positions within the broadcast industry. Share with us what you're doing.
We have a service called Access 2000. It's new, by the way, but it's a continuation of our referral service where we hear from, probably 2,000 companies a year, which might represent 5,000 radio and television stations. And they send us their job openings. And we hear from maybe 1,000, 1,500 people a year with resumes and stuff. And we have tried by hand to match them up, but now we're going on computer. And it's a service we're developing, and we're looking for support from the broadcasters. We're getting a little support. We anticipate getting more support. So if you're looking for them, we're going to punch them up. You can punch into the system and get 10 resumes, 15 resumes, or you can talk to one of my 3 experts on personnel development, diversity in the workforce, to make sure that you know what to do, that you can say, hey, that's wrong, that ain't gonna work. You know, if this person ain't doing the job, get them out of there. Let's get somebody else in there, and work with them to help keep their workforce balanced and looking like America.
Do you find that a lot of these advertisements or requests that you receive in your office are legitimate, or are some of these just ways in which companies can cover their behinds?
Well, yeah, some of them are just paper trails, and I agree with that, but there are a lot of them that are legitimate and they are sincere. And we separate out, you know, the folks that we know are serious and the folks who are just looking for a record. You know, so yeah, we do admit that it exists. We don't encourage it, and we encourage, you know, like one-on-one contact. I'll talk to you. I'll know what you're looking for. So when I get them people in there and you jive, and I'm gonna call you and say, hey man, don't play no games with this organization and with the individuals that we're sending you. They're looking for jobs. Now I can't tell you you got to hire that one, but if I find out that you're hiring less qualified white folks and black people are being turned away, we might have to sue you. You know, and I mean, that's something we aren't encouraging as the first line of action. So we're going to work with you. But if you jive, and you know, you might have your lawyer talk to my lawyer.
You know, you watch television, particularly the network shows. You got Dateline NBC, you got Primetime Live, 2020, and the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
And when you evaluate the kinds of programs or segments that they have on these programs, for the most part, you see a lot of disparaging images and stories about the realities of the inner city and crime and what have you. Yet when you look at the talent, Pluria, on these programs, you see just a paucity of African American representation. Is there any hope for any better or greater participation?
Well, see, what you have to realize is that the networks are not regulated. Their owned and operated stations are. All right, so they don't really have to answer to nobody in programming. So it's a lot more difficult to get a handle on. I think with the diversity in programming about to reach the explosion stage, that more people are going to pay more attention to the segments. Okay, so if there's a group of black people in these 50 cable markets that this program ought to appeal to, then it's going to be real important that you send sensitive programming into those 50 markets. Okay, so as we're able to narrowcast more, I think we'll get more quality programming for people of color because it's going to be profitable. Now, some white folks are so dumb that they don't want to get the information and market better because they're just racist. It's just in them. You know, we got to do that with those people. Well, hell, we don't need it. So hell, let them suffer. You know, you lose money or you lose the opportunity to make money, good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because you can't understand that I fly and I bank and I buy stocks and I buy minivans and I buy Lexus and I buy insurance and, you know, so target me. You know, I don't look like them 4 white quarterbacks you on. Where was Warren Moon? Where was Randall Cunningham? On that stuff that they got Joe Montana and them other folks. Hey man, come on. Cause United Way, I ain't, you know, when they start talking about United Way, you know, they've been part of the problem in America as far as I'm concerned, you know, because they had nothing to do with the liberation of black folks in this country.
Earlier you had indicated that in terms of our participation in the media, African Americans haven't really lost any ground, but we really haven't gained any ground. Do you find from your own research and observations that white women in particular have been the biggest beneficiaries of?
Oh yeah, I mean the civil rights movement is over, white women won. That's gut-wrenching, okay? But it's true. You know, I call them the Me Too people. We fought the civil rights struggle. The women's movement came right on top of it. And they came in and said, okay, you did for the black folks, now you got to do for the women. So I call them the Me Too people. And I ain't looking for no fight with white women. It doesn't bother me that they might be offended, but it's true. 1 year, white women increased 29%. Black women increased 1%. Where we at, South Africa or somewhere? That's what it looks like.
Well, let me ask you this, Pluria. Now, what is happening on the college level in terms of internships? Are people getting involved and getting trained properly?
Well, yeah, but see, they got a lot of situations where those internships are for white kids only. It doesn't say that. That's who gets the internships. You know, we're doing a directory of internships. So we're going to make sure that our kids know where all these internships are and going to be encouraged to apply for them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and jobs, by the way. See, white folks get jobs, we get internships. We get trained and they get jobs. Come on.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that what a lot of media organizations are saying, that they can't find qualified minorities to fill positions, that they really want minorities in their organization, but they can't find any? Is that legitimate?
I don't think it's legitimate. Any person who says they can't find a qualified black person, now I can't talk about the others, okay? If you can't find a qualified African American, call the National Black Media Coalition. Write us, be in touch with us, talk on the phone. and we're going to make sure that you have a pipeline into your station where you can get qualified folks. Now, if you're in a market that's at a certain size, it's real small market, medium-sized market, you might have to take a person of color and train them your way, okay? I mean, we got a lot of very talented people who, with experience in this business, we got a lot of kids who've been educated in the business, have worked in some radio and television stations and cable systems and newspapers, who just need an opportunity. See, the problem is that they can talk all that crap they want to, but where the rubber meets the road is how many opportunities do you extend to young people who say, come on in here, you can be as successful as I was. Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, they take some of the dumbest white kids you've ever seen in your life, and they develop. And we got kids that are bright who don't get the opportunity that the dumb white kid gets. And they around here talking about reverse discrimination.
Are you getting any help from the Congressional Black Caucus or any of the congressional arms?
Well, we get a little help from time to time, but see, the disparaging part about the caucus is that they don't have a single member on the subcommittee on telecommunications. So when you start talking about a legislative agenda, they don't have one in telecommunications. They have a communication brain trust, but it is not tied to a congressperson who's on that subcommittee. So I spoke on that yesterday, and hopefully that's going to be rectified before this weekend next year.
And what's it going to take, some seniority in Congress in order to qualify?
Well, no, it just takes one of those 20 senior members to understand that this stuff's important. Radio, television, cable television, and newspaper determine, you know, whether your community is healthy or sick. You know, I mean, so much is determined by what the media just thinks it ought to be. So you better have some impact on the media so all your other programs work.
I told you he was controversial. That's all we have time for tonight. We hope to see you again next month. Good night, everybody.